Okay, we're live on our Facebook page, our YouTube page, maybe even Instagram. We're trying that today too, I think, but definitely on TikTok, our TikTok page, our little 2 o'clock time for a little pre-race show here on Team Blaney podcast. I kind of want to go over Saturday qualifying practice stuff first, real quick, before we get into what's happening today. Um, Mainly because there's a lot of action, even though your times that we're going to look at talk about weren't the best. um, there was a reason why they weren't the best, and I think it has a lot to do with tires, and specifically left rear tire. Group one practice, the 54 car goes out and sets the fast lap at like 29.97, and then he only runs 14 laps, and the reason he only runs 14 laps, that last lap, his left rear tire went flat. Uh, they have issues with the 6 car, the 54, the 88, and the 19, all in that first group. Um, the six, or I'm sorry, SVG got 9 laps in. His left rear went flat. Brad went 13 laps before his went flat. And then you had Ty at 14 laps, and then Briscoe on lap 24, his left rear went flat. So they were definitely messing with air pressures. And then, while the pressures were low, going over the bump, and then causing that slow leak that ends up blowing up once the tire starts to gain some pressure. So the TV broadcast was a little bit incorrect in saying that this was not a new tire. This was not a new tire for the mile and a halfs, but this is a new tire, left rear tire combination for Kansas. They did not run this tire combination at Kansas last year. So it definitely showed and talked about the bump in turn one. Group two, like I said, group two comes out and I think ends up being a little more conservative instead of usually being faster because the track is cleaned up with the rubber a little bit and or rubbered in and cleaned up, and they're not. And the only issue during that group practice was the 38 car, and his was a right rear, which is totally different than what had happened with the other guys. I'm not sure exactly what happened there. Um, Also, the 5 car being one of the faster guys out there scrubs the wall in 3 and 4. Ryan runs about 18 laps and comes in just before we get a caution for the 38. Um, his individual lap ends up P21 overall, about 0.392 back of what the 54 did in that first practice here. The fastest guy from Group 2 is the 24 car. Ryan goes out qualifying, goes out 36th overall, and initially gets to P8 by doing that. So once again, what we talk about on our show is that once you get back into that cycle of being one of the top guys, the next week when it comes time for practice, when it comes time for qualifying, you get to go out later, and the later you get to go out, the better run you're going to usually get. As those guys earlier in the session don't. We have the 2 and the 22 and the 5 run after Ryan, and of course go past him. The 22 ends up P5 with a 29.528. Ryan's was a 29.596. So that tells you how close they were between 8th or between 10th and 5th. The 5 gets the pole with the 23.931. It is a 0.766 gain on their fastest lap in practice. And like I said, I think practice was a little bit conservative, just based on the fact that they saw those blown tires in the first session. So I guarantee you, some of the guys lost a little speed because they went out there and made sure they had a little better air pressure in that rear tire. So we get to today. We got today's stages are going to be 80, 165 will be the second stage, and then 267. 9 sets of tires and a fuel run of 62 to 67 laps. So be interesting to see if they can get that far into a run without anybody losing a tire. But to the rear, here's the interesting thing. To the guys to the rear, the 6, who had one of the tire issues, the 10, the 19, who had one of the other tire issues, the 21. I'm not sure exactly what 21's problem issue was. Maybe investigate it before we get to our podcast tomorrow night because their qualifying time wasn't very good. The 38 to the rear, the 54 to the rear, and the 88 to the rear. And like I said, 38, 54, 88, all cars that had problems with rear tires. What's great about this is the 54 was in the row that Ryan starts in. He was an even number in front of Ryan, and Ryan's row should move up one row to start the race. So now instead of starting 10th, it'll be actually like 8th at the initial start. And it'll be interesting to see because the leader can choose on the initial start. The pole sitter, the 5, can choose whether he wants to start from the high lane or the low lane. So if he chooses the high lane, that lane should get a little momentum right off the get go too. So um, real interesting to see what these guys with the tire issue, how much speed, like the 54 car was wildly fast early on before he had that tire blow in the first practice. So interesting to see how well he can work up through the field. I'm not exactly sure what the tens, unapproved adjustment was, but that'll move him back to start the race too. So today should be very, very interesting to see what these guys do with clean air once they're up there, and hopefully you don't have to move very far to get to clean air. Hopefully we get the stage points right off the bat, and then really more than anything else, just want to see run a clean race, not anybody else in the way of doing goofy things. So um, today will be a good day, I think, for watching some racing. I don't know anything else. Like we got to look at some different things today. This will be like the first true test of the pit crew. I mean, I know they've got made their change a couple weeks ago, but this week is way more pit stop centric on pit time. So it'll be real interesting to see what the guys do today with the changes they made last week. Seemed pretty good. Also, like I'm realizing more and more watching some of these pit stops that your pit position is everything. Ryan will start with a pit stall today that's just past the start finish line, and he's got the opening behind him that goes behind the pit wall, and then um, a blank stall beyond that. And I believe I'm not sure. Okay, I have to look and see again where, but there was somebody in front of him who should be actually back in the field. I think it was SVG. So hopefully the SVG coming in and around him won't be too much of an issue as the day goes on. But having those guys, you not have to worry about coming in and hitting the sign properly, going around somebody, is really, really huge because you basically have 2 boxes of area to use to get to that pit stall. So that should be pretty cool. Yeah, I see, and people are commenting in the chat on the TikTok. Of course, I already talked about a minute ago that Gibbs is dropping to the rear for the adjustment. So that'll move, like I said, that moves Ryan up a row. Everybody in that even number row will move up one spot to start the race. And, so looking forward to that today. This week coming up, like I said, on the podcast tomorrow night, once again, we'll do this live at 8:30 roughly. And like I said last week, hopefully you kind of keep an eye out. I'm not sure, but there should be another podcast coming up later in the week. I don't know if we'll be doing it live or not. But if you subscribe to our feeds, somewhere do that because something should pop up later in the week, barring something going wrong. We have something lined up, a guest lined up later this week. I don't want to just say yet because I don't want to jinx it, but hopefully be a good, fun guest that you guys will enjoy, just like we like to do every couple weeks if we can. I don't know if anything else. I see that some of the guys that joined in the TikTok chat at least. Go 24. I just don't know. It's so weird. This is one of those tracks that it's going to be the 45, the 5, the 20. Guys who really like to run the wall more than anything else. So if the 24 can get up there and be on the wall all day long, he should be pretty decent. I don't know. Ryan's gotten pretty good at it in the last couple of years himself. But I don't know, like with like the tire situation too. Like if this tire ends up giving a little early in a run, how hard it'll be to do that and not hit that wall too. So Larson did it in practice yesterday. Now a lot of times they tell you Larson's just testing to see how far he can get. So he learned from it, and we'll see what he does with it once the race starts. But then again, we've also seen Larson have an issue with it too. So if you haven't done so, make sure you put your fantasy lineup together. Already did ours here today for the, I would go over, but I'm using my phone actually right now. So, but make sure you get your fantasy lineup before the start of the race and all your matchups done for the day. And can I say 45? Yeah, I said it, he's definitely one of the guys that'll be up on the wall. But he's another one. It's like really weird. Like there'd be times where he is just so good up there and so confident in himself. Really, it's weird. Like just to get into Reddick just for a second. Um, Watching the documentary and listening to him in that documentary, extremely interesting to hear his insight and how um, he attacks racing. He is a confidence guy. When he's got confidence, when he knows he can be out there and he knows he can get the car to do what he wants, he is extremely hard to beat. Um, it's so weird. Like, and Ryan does this too when he gets to the front. He believes that he should be there, and he owns that that he's up there, and he believes he should win once he's near the front, anywhere near the front. So, and Tyler's the same way. And when Tyler's running mid pack or 10th or 12th, there's something that just he loses confidence, and it's sometimes it's the car, it's not him. That's the funny part is he just when he got the car underneath him, he is tough to beat. So it'll be interesting to see today. Like I said, how many of those guys can get to the wall early, run the wall, run great lap times. How long are the runs going to be? That's the question. Is this tire? Are guys going to be dangerous with this tire on the air pressures to start the race? Are we going to have a blowout early on? I mean, hopefully not, because I think that most of the really good drivers do well over long runs. So I'm um, hoping for Ryan to really hopefully get to rip some good laps and see what kind of lap times he has versus those other guys. And like last week, he was literally coming before the all those cautions start happening. He was second behind Larson, and he was a tenth to 2/10 faster than Larson every lap, and he was coming for him. So that's the kind of stuff I like to watch, whether it's him or any of the other guys today. Larson might get up front, check out for a while, but over a long run, do they adjust the car properly? Do other guys adjust better? And if they do they come and get him? That's happened to him before, where uh, the car got a little tight or loose, tight more than anything else. And loose, he's fine with loose. He's a dirt guy, but and the car's gotten too tight on him in certain times, situations, and he just went away from him where he just didn't have speed because of that. So he ran a line he didn't want to have to run because of that. So real interesting today to see how that goes. There was no wind yesterday during practice, so that kind of like changed things a little bit too. I'm not sure exactly what forecast is looking like today, but the windier it is there in Kansas, the more that'll affect the handling and helps the guys that run against the wall because they get out of the wind a little bit, but down the back stretch and setting up that turn into turn 3 and 4 be interesting if the wind's blowing headwind up the straightaway. So like I said, I think about we just want to come in and do this quick little pre-race type thing here. I got to go set up my HBO Max here in a couple minutes to get the in-car camera all set up for the day. But tomorrow night 8:30, like I said, and then later in the week, like I said, I'm not even sure if we're going to do the interview as a live or if we're just going to post it afterward. It's kind of up to the guest when we have guests now that we can do it this way. Um, but we may just tape it and then you'll see it post pretty much right afterward anyway. So um, thank everybody for tuning in real quick. Like I said, we'll catch you at 8:30 tomorrow night on our YouTube, our Facebook, and I think, like I said, we're trying to do Instagram live too. I don't know if it's working or not yet. Um, so, and always on TikTok. So thanks everybody for joining in. We'll catch you guys tomorrow night, 8:30, right here on the Team Blaney.